I'm Richard Gearhart, an intellectual property attorney specializing in patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart, not an attorney. I work at Gearhart Law doing marketing, and I have my own startup.
Welcome to Passage to Profit, everybody, the road to entrepreneurship, where we talk with entrepreneurs, innovators, and discuss the intellectual property that helps them flourish. Tonight, we have a really, really amazing guest. We have with us Michael Cerenzie, founder of Stratagem Group and a Hollywood film producer.
And then we have two amazing presenters. First, Rob Imbo with Adapt Agritech, a new way to grow food. Talk about the future and innovation. This is amazing. You have to stay tuned and hear this. And then we have Somaya, Oueslati, and Hilda Bergman, young moms who have found a solution to taking your kid out in the rain.
What responsible mother does that? Well, I guess we'll find out, won't we?
Well,
but before we get to our distinguished guests, it's time for IP in the news. And what is our IP in the news tonight?
Oh boy, this is a big trademark infringement. So what if you went to give your kid Nerds ropes, but they were laced with THC legally, I guess, and you didn't know it?
So what is a nerd rope anyway?
It's a candy that kids love.
Oh, okay. You mean like Nerd the candies that you see?
Nerds the candies.
You see Nerds the candies.
I'm sorry.
And your point is that they would be laced with marijuana.
Right. So a company called, what is their name? Here we go. A company called Top 5 Wholesale makes THC laced candies, and they're using trademarks identical to Ferrara Candy Company, which makes Nerds and Trolley candies. And they think it'll cause consumer confusion. Well, I do think this.
Well, I guess if you get high, you're going to be pretty confused, aren't you?
I went on Top 5's website,
right,
to look at their candy, and it is identical.
The wrappers are the same.
Everything's exactly the same.
It's
and
amazing.
They have some language on there that means something to people who know what THC stuff is, but I don't. So like if I went on there as a young mom, I would just think, oh, maybe this is a good place to get these candies. I wouldn't know the difference, really.
Right. Or, I guess I'm trying to figure out why they would steal another company's branding to put their pot in.
I have no idea, but luckily we have very strong trademark laws in the United States.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking maybe if for adolescents who want to walk around with pot in their pocket, and if they get pulled over or something, then they can just say it's regular candy.
Oh, well, they're selling it in Florida, and the sale of recreational marijuana is illegal in Florida.
Well, there you go.
So that's probably why. But they're using the trademark system now. Ferrara Candy Company is using our trademark system to try to make this stop.
It sounds like this is more for the Justice Department, right? Or like some big government agency, but I'm glad they're on it with the trademark stuff, because that really is very misleading. And not only is it potentially bad, because if you're taking marijuana for some reason and you're in a situation where you shouldn't, that's bad. But also they're capitalizing off of the Nerds brand, which is famous. So it's a double whammy.
They're trying to draw kids in like the cigarette makers did years ago, right?
Well, yeah. Of course.
So anyway, we need to see what our guests think about this.
Okay. I
Richard's
agree.
Roundtable.
It's time for Richard's Roundtable. Michael, what do you have to say about this?
Well, I think it's dangerous and a little scary. To your point, though, there's a relative example in the film business that's identical, except we don't lace it with drugs. Bollywood literally takes titles of Hollywood every day, remakes the movie in their own way, and calls it the same thing. So from an infringement standpoint, right, from an intellectual property standpoint, what you're saying, they're grabbing the marketing position of it, and they're allowing them to, run up a profit position on your talent, right? So the same way you look at candy,
right?
I look at IP from the film business, right? So the difference in this is the danger in ours is it's box office revenues that you're not going to receive from your IP. This could be a dangerous, aspect of someone overdosing or a child being in harm's way, which is much more serious.
Yeah, it's so hard to enforce stuff in India. I mean, by the time you would actually get it in court, and it just like, it takes years. And by that time, it's the movie is long gone, right? So it's and if they do a bad version of it, then it's kind of like in India with how many millions, billions of people, everybody thinks that you made a crummy movie, sorry. And so there's no control over the
No.
quality. So it
No,
just
zero.
kills you. Yeah.
Yeah, copycats are really not very nice people.
No, they're
No.
they're copycats. They're ripper-offers.
Yeah.
So well, that's a very interesting perspective, Michael. I appreciate that. Rob, what are your thoughts?
I mean, they're the same in respect to, children. I literally, it just hits home because I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I literally just heard nerds last week, and the nerds in the fun dip, right? The stuff that I grew up with. So I can see it in her little candy bowl. So that, scares me a little. I think as an adult, I like to treat myself to candy. I have some of those sweet tarts. Maybe I would like some nerds. What I wouldn't like is being high while I'm driving, right? And like cannabis for me is, I'm really boring. It's like a sleep aid. My back hurts, I'll take a THC, and I'll go to sleep. I'm really boring that way. And third, I mean, they're likely doing this for a lot of reasons, but THC or cannabis products don't really taste very good. Right. So the greedy capitalist side of me, siding with the initial product makers, saying like, you're using our packaging and you're putting the stuff in my mouth and it tastes like garbage. I'm not going to go back to this stuff. Right. This is not how I remember it.
Right.
No, that's a good point. That's a really
right?
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. What if the shipments get mixed up and a truckload of this goes to Costco and the other truckload goes to wherever, but you end up buying Twizzlers or something and it's laced with marijuana?
Could you imagine being a teacher in your whole class?
Here, everyone, you get a Twizzler for that correct answer.
That's terrible.
Okay. So Samaya, what are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously the same as you guys talking about, it's very scary. I have a child myself and he's older than yours, Robert. He's 12, so they're very curious. And that's something that I could see happen actually in school, where the kids might buy it and then go, oh, hey, have you heard about, you know what I mean? So it's a very dangerous thing to do,
Right.
besides all the legal stuff, but it's dangerous.
It
Which
is.
is scary as a parent.
I don't know, but there is no minimum age for marijuana, right?
I think there is.
Is there? I mean, when the states where it's
I
been
think-
legalized, is
I
there a
think it's
minimum
like
age?
it's 21, I think.
Is it 21?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to hear from Hilda now.
Well, I think it's so immoral and wrong in every way to make a drug look like a candy, and that would also make the kids more to indulge more. It's more fun to eat something that looks like candy versus if it looks like a drug, then maybe you want to eat 2 pieces of it. And I also have kids who are the same age as Somaya, and it's scary because they are curious and they want to try. And if something looks fun, why not? And it could be, end up very bad. So wrong in every way.
I mean, I have to admit, there have been times when I've devoured half a bag of candy, right?
Right.
I would eat so much of it, I wouldn't even know how much I would have had, right? So it's, this is crazy. I mean, these people it shouldn't be a civil lawsuit. They should be arrested and put in jail, right?
They should be.
Yeah. Kenya?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone here. I think also too, from being able to conceal things. You think about kids and how they bring things to school and drugs being in school. This is a very easy way for kids to be able to bring stuff, right? And it just slides under the radar because it has the marketing and the branding of nerds. So it's interesting that they are going this direction. I also agree with Michael. It's a huge play on the nerds marketing. I mean, think of all the years and the millions and millions of dollars that that brand has spent on, positioning itself in the market in terms of brand recognition. You see it, it's nerds. I mean, sometimes you don't even need to read the box. You see the colors and you're immediately visually, what it is. So, you know, it's crazy that people would try to leverage, but not unheard of, right? And these are the times that we're in.
Right.
Right.
And I guess, so anyway, I hope the courts deal with this. There's other manufacturers that are doing the same thing with different kinds of candies. I think
Right.
Hershey's is one of them. There's another
Well,
one.
Hershey settled an infringement lawsuit, and then Wrigley
Wrigley too, for what
For-
is it, gum?
candy copying weed products over trademarks. I don't know.
Mm.
I didn't look at those two articles, but it seems to be a big thing, like stealing somebody else's brand. And then, but this is a dangerous steal, like
Yeah.
Michael
Yeah.
was saying.
Yeah. So anyway, on that happy note, we're going to go on with the show. Okay. So tonight we have, we have Michael.
No, don't say tonight. You have to start over.
Okay. So on with the show. We have with us today, Michael Cerenzie, and I want to get this introduction right because he has done so much, and it's really an honor to have him on. Michael is the founder of the Stratagem Group, and he has collaborated with filmmakers Jim Sheridan, Robert Altman, and Sidney Lumet, as well as famous actors Philip Seymour Hoffman, James Franco, Matt Dillon, Albert Finney, and the list, I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Marissa Tomei.
Yeah, I know, but I never pronounce her name right. And then he produced Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which was directed by the legendary Academy Award-winning filmmaker Sidney Lumet, and the film garnered Michael a prestigious AFI award, and Time Magazine named it #3 on their top 10 list of films when it was released. So welcome to the show, Michael. It is really a pleasure to have you here. And so what got you going in the film business, I guess, is my first question.
Film business. Actually, I originally, was born in Canada. I moved to New York to study at Juilliard and with William Esper in 1991. So I started as an actor, but the first year there, I started interning at a theater company off Broadway called the Ensemble Studio Theater, which is at 52nd. And I ended up becoming the associate producer of that theater company the first year. And in the second year, I won an Obie Award in the 92-93 season for the Marathon of One Act Plays, but I couldn't accept it because I was illegal at the time. So I didn't have a permit to work in the US. So it was a very quick transition though from, I'll say, acting and playwriting into producing. And from there, that took me to Hollywood, and I started working with HBO, creating TV series and documentaries for HBO.
That's great. So
Excellent.
what does a producer do? I've always been unclear about that.
So there's many different kind of producers. The type of producer I am, is I'm a creative producer. So I literally will take an original thought and have it adapted into a screenplay, or I will take a 19th century short story and adapt it into a screenplay, or an article from Vanity Fair and adapt it into a screenplay, or just have an original screenplay created. So it's a creative process of vision and idea that ends up being very collaborative, bringing on usually a writer, because I don't write the screenplay myself. I develop story. And then between the screenwriter and the filmmaker, you're creating the narrative vision, which then becomes a screenplay, which you end up having a filmmaker direct. So my process is very long in a sense, because the creative process of finding an idea that you want to live with, and then taking that idea that shares a certain part of humanity that you think you want to shed light on, that actually people would actually go to the movie theaters in the time, or now watch on Netflix or Amazon, and develop that, create that, attach all the elements creatively, meaning the actors, the physical production, financing it, so monetizing it, and then producing it, and then distributing it.
Right.
So I kind of do the whole thing, which is kind of rare. Usually people do a piece of that, right? The financing piece or the creative piece or the development piece. But I wanted to be able to learn all aspects of that.
Right. So I wanted to talk about that because
Mhm.
Stratagem Group, I went on your website, which is stratagemgroup.ca.
Mhm.
And there's a tab there where you have like 4 different specialties, but you train people, you get financing, you even help people find tax breaks. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It's like a white glove thing almost. I was just really surprised. I've never seen something like that before.
My founding partners, Michelle Losnack, would love that you said it's a white glove thing, because that was the strategy. So the Stratagem Group is a departure or an extrapolation of my creative career. It's really a collaboration between myself and Michelle, who's my founding partner, another partner, Jeff Melanson. This group of companies, they do several things. We build film studios. We built actually the largest film studio in Canada. We built the only film studio the last 2 years during COVID, which we housed Hawkeye for Marvel in our studios last year, as well. Mayor of Kingstown, which was with Jeremy Renner, which is, if you guys watch Yellowstone, is Taylor Sheridan's TV series. This was one of his new series that he created that we housed here as an inaugural production. We also, to your point, do a ton in workforce strategy. We work with 22 colleges in Ontario, 4 universities. We work Toronto District School Board, which has 225,000 students, as well as Toronto City Housing, which has at-risk youth in the city. So we put 7,000 students, I think, through training during the last 2 years of COVID online. We have a very robust e-learning strategy to do that on an ongoing basis. We do production service, to your point. We do content production, and we do finance. And what we really do is we make it so when an American production comes north of the border, there's not even a speed bump. So creatively, we want them to have the same experience if they shot in Los Angeles, they shot in Manhattan, they shot in Atlanta, where I got my experience. So we created the group of verticals that actually do that, hopefully somewhat seamlessly, for the Americans coming up here to shooting their high-end content in Canada.
Wow. That is a turnkey operation, really.
Now you're quoting me. That's awesome. It is a turnkey operation. We have the only turnkey operation in Canada that does that. Yeah.
So you bought a big piece of land and built a big studio with, it's not just one studio. I looked at the blueprint on your website. You have a whole bunch of studios in there. Is that right?
It's 100,000 square feet of stage and 150,000 square feet of support. So it's 250,000 square feet.
Wow.
That's a lot of room.
Yeah.
And we're building another 1 million square feet in Toronto. And we're also now looking at Los Angeles, New York, and London. So we're really a global company. Our roots are Canadian. The core ownership is Canadian, but with a very global perspective, probably taking into account a lot of my experience for 26 years abroad, and incorporating it into a strategy where we feel there's a competitive advantage in what we do.
So if I were somebody that had an idea, like I've read some books that I would really love to see come to screen, but they're not mine. But
Sure.
let's just say I had an idea and I wanted to bring something to screen. Could I work with you? Like, how would we get started? Or are you higher level than that?
No. So that's more what would be construed as a development company, like a content development company, production company. Currently, the way we're set up is we're production service and content production. So we're not developing a lot of our own content right now.
Okay.
We are collaborating with other large US companies on their content and producing it. But to the point you're making, that'll be the next iteration of what we're doing. We're launching a film fund next year, which will probably go to $50 million film fund. It'll be the only film fund in Canada, actually, outside of its government funding. But it would, at that point, have a development strategy and development team that we would oversee that would, like, if you had a great idea and you submitted that idea and said, oh, we find this interesting, we would then co-develop it with you and take it through the process that I originally explained of what I
So would that be kind of like indie then? I'm sorry.
It would be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be independent. And independent has changed in the sense that now with the streaming companies, they're part of that mechanism, right? Whereas before you would be looking at the other companies like Sony Classics or, Paramount Vantage, the independent labels, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Apple have all taken over a piece of that independent as well.
Well, this is really interesting, Michael. We have to take a commercial break, but we'll be back with more Michael Cerenzie, and who is the founder of Stratagem, and more Passage to Profit right after this. And welcome back, everybody. Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest, Michael Cerenzie. Michael, if there's a young producer out there looking to make his or her way in the world of film, what kind of advice would you give to them?
Clear vision. You have to have clear vision of what you want to do. I think that the quality that made or gave me, whether it was an advantage or success of any sense, is tenacity. You have to have an enormous amount of tenacity and focus. And you have to have the ability to endure and succeed in failure. And that's going to sound a little maybe counterintuitive to some people, but for me, to truly attempt things and to fail into them and to move through them is where you're going to find your truest self and your truest success. So I think that most people are afraid of that, right? We fear, and I'll say, here's what's more difficult today for a young person, to the question, Richard, is that young people today are faced with social media and the whole aspect of being monitored and judged, sometimes in a good way, sometimes not such a good way. And I think that reflective piece on themselves is tougher for them to go through that process that I'm talking about. My road was very long, from Sault Ste. Marie to Toronto to New York to LA. So my first movie was a $10 million movie with Martin Scorsese executive producing for MGM, which sounds amazing, right?
Right.
But it took 17 years. 17 years to do that. I call it the analog version, right?
Yeah.
All those moves and all that play. So, but it was the ability to endure and to keep faith, for someone to keep faith in the ideals that he or she believe in. And I think that that's the most integral part of someone's vision.
Well, just to your point about social media, though, I mean, with social media now, failure is so much more public than it was when I was growing up, which was a long time ago, before computers even. But if I failed, which I did frequently, at least I sort of failed privately, right? And now everybody puts everything out there all the time. And I don't know whether that makes people more comfortable with screwing up, but it certainly raises the stakes. And maybe people's attitudes now are changing about it, because if everybody sees everybody else failing, then it's okay to fail. But still, I think a large number of people would not appreciate just having the world staring at them as something goes wrong, right? And so it's definitely a different environment, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite, I'm an odd guy, but my favorite poem is called My Defeat by Khalil Gibran, which is the relationship between you and your innermost failings, but it's a love affair, right? Because it's personal and you journey together through that, right? And I believe that the difficulty of young people today is the ideas that are being forced upon them with social media, I think, are false for most of the sense. I think people have to take more time and seclude themselves. And I don't mean like in a private meditation, but in a sense of private meditation of saying, this is what I want to do. This is my story. This is not the story that someone else has given me. This is my story. This is my narrative, right? We were talking, actually, the group of us on the phone, online, and everyone's in New York. Everyone used to be in New York, and except I think, Rob, I'm not sure if you lived in New York or not, but I think everyone else is in New York. And I was talking about how I miss New York. I went to New York to test my mettle, right? So I went to New York to compete, and I wanted to know how I measured up to all these other remarkable individuals, because no one is really from New York, right? It's almost like people come there
Right.
to excel in music or in finance or in law or in entertainment or in, you know, in whatever they do. And I think if you took a cross section of all the people that are on this call and all the people that you meet in Manhattan that are trying to succeed, there's a thread that runs through them, which is they believe that they should be there. They believe that they have a right to be heard. They have a voice that they want to be spoken and understood. And I think that's the most important thing that that young entrepreneur, that young filmmaker has to hold on to. Because I never made films that were films that other people wanted to. Like, I made films that I grew up on, and I made films that I thought I wanted people to see. I didn't go, okay, everyone's doing Marvel now, or everyone's doing a Western, or everyone's doing an action film. I thought that cinema should be expressed, like I said originally, that there's a part of human quality that you want to shed light on for, say, 2 hours and express that. You saw this in Off-Broadway versus commercialization of Broadway in the 60s with the explosion of Off-Broadway, which matched with the cinema in the 70s and 80s from the Martin Scorsese's and all the young filmmakers that were coming out of that time. That came out of the music in the 60s down in the Village. It came in, it incorporated with theater, and it incorporated with film. And that's why you got dynamic film in the 70s and 80s.
Kenya, do you have any thoughts or questions you'd like to add?
No, I was just going to say that's awesome how like that cross cultural pollination kind of happens sometimes. I was just thinking about the profitability of film, and even the recent Top Gun remake that I feel like amassed over like $200 million or something crazy. And I saw that Tom Cruise is actually getting residuals on that even after he took part in it. And I wanted you to speak a little bit more about some of those unknown, you know, opportunities for profit in the film industry that are sometimes maybe overlooked by creatives.
So that's a great question, right? One, I think Top Gun's a great movie. It's a great sequel. It brought back a box office for the first time in 2 years, 2.5 years. It's amazing because I saw the first one when it came out, which was, I think, 88 or something, or 89, whatever it was, for him to star in it. 35 years later, you know, and he still looks good. Good for Tom.
Great.
He looks great, you know, true movie star, like true movie star. It's a good question, though. So in independent film, it's the most live ancillary income, like ancillary benefit you would have in the gross participation in independent film, because the way it's structured in the financial modeling of it, right? So when you sell it, you'll get residuals on the sale, and you'll get remunerated over 5-7 year cycles is the licensing period. If you do a studio movie, like say Warner Brothers, a traditional studio film with Warner's or Disney, you would be in this net adjusted gross that means you'll never see it unless you are Tom Cruise and you're driving the box office of the feature, right? In the new model, which is the Netflix model, there's no residuals. So when an actor, a writer, or director, or producer, this is really important, does a film, they get paid to show up and do their role, for instance, and there's no residual. So that could still be beneficial for the producer, because the producer can say, make a movie for $5 million and sell it for $12 million, say, to a streaming company. So they can make a large profit position. But if you're the actor or the director, or usually anybody else in that pool, unless you have a contract that actually puts you in tandem with, I'll say, the financier, maybe more than even the producer, but usually the producer financier, then there is no upside in that any longer, right? So there is a large rebirth, to your question, which is great, in independent filmmaking. There was a great article that came out at Cannes about Rogue Sutherland, a creative artist who runs independent feature there, about the rebirth of independent film, for the reason because the streaming companies don't give a back-end participation. So there's been this kind of re-energized view of independent feature in today's market and how people should be participating. And then there's a whole blockchain element of how things are financed, or how things are going to be financed now in a different way. So that, you know, in NFTs, but in the blockchain sense that you could own a piece of an IP by investing into a blockchain strategy, which is probably too long of a conversation for me to get forward right here. But it's very interesting that independent features has come back with interest the way it has.
So, but that's interesting though. How would residuals work with Netflix? Would they,
You
did,
don't get them with Netflix.
They buy it out. They buy out the whole contract.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was like, and Netflix just makes money by selling subscriptions, right? And I guess also now charging for some movies, right? Or is that Amazon? But
I can never remember. But
No, Amazon, your Amazon is actually covered in your Prime account. Like,
Right.
so there is no charge if you have a Prime account. Netflix doesn't charge any additional. Disney will charge for a release. Some of the other studios that are streaming off their studio facility will charge for a theatrical release or a pre-release on screen at home versus the actual at the office. But yeah, they're buying out, to your point, they're buying out the contract, and it's hard for them to attract, Richard, some of the filmmakers and some of the top talent, because they've tried to they've tried to quantify it and say, okay, we'll give you an extra 5 million or 10 million, say, if you're a movie star of value. But it's hard because your point that you're making is that with the long tail of that you could be giving up tens of millions of dollars or millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending what the case is, over a period of time with that buyout.
right. So Michael, then what is the best way for a young filmmaker or any filmmaker to get their film to market and get the most money for it?
The great thing today is you can shoot a movie on your iPhone. You could edit it on your iPhone. You can cut it. I mean, literally, you could edit it, cut it, score it on your computer. My biggest advice, I mentor a lot of young people, is go do it. Like, just get up, go shoot it, go write it, go do it, and keep doing it. I think the way I did it is incorrect, totally incorrect. The gamble is so big, it doesn't even make sense when I look back over my shoulder. I tell young people that I mentor now to, like, go home tonight, write it, get together with another friend, shoot it, get some people, I think the more work you put out, the more prolific you are, to your point, to your question, Elizabeth, the more apt you are or success is available to you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But to the old system of saying, I want, a studio to develop my screenplay, and like the old process is, I think, archaic in most ways. And if you believe in what you have, if you believe in what you're writing, if you believe in what you're creating, what you're producing, then you should just go do it. You don't need someone else's help to do it.
I think there's a corollary there, though, with entrepreneurship in general.
Yeah.
It used to be that there were all these gatekeepers for making new products, for creating new services, and a lot of those gatekeepers are gone, or at least you can get around the gatekeepers. And if you do have something of value, then you can make it work until one of the gatekeepers notices, and then buys you out or does something.
I mean, just so to your point, we built a movie studio here during a time that nobody built a movie studio during COVID anywhere in the world. Right. We were non-essential construction, which means we weren't supposed to be able to build it. We could get shut down at any moment. We couldn't get the banks to finance us because we didn't have proof of concept. We had to privately finance it with myself and some friends, literally with some friends that did it. And we opened it, and we had two of the biggest shows that ever came to Canada, and we weren't in the studio business before, right? So to your point, right, we did a lot of research, we did a lot of market data background, we spent a lot of time in Los Angeles talking to the heads of physical, what they wanted in a studio. But at the end of the day, there was a time where you could not put up a studio and take position in those type of level shows unless you'd been around for 30 years and had a history with the studios. It just wasn't available. But market demand, right, necessity, quality, right, and design and management, right? So it is entrepreneurial, right? And you're right, those pieces are being broken down all the time now.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that comes to mind for me is you couldn't get a book published unless the editor approved it, right? And you needed to have an agent and all that. And then Amazon just blew that out of the water, right?
Which I think is amazing. I think that's amazing, by the way, that they did that.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we have to wrap up this segment. Michael, you've been fantastic and a wealth of information. I've really enjoyed listening to all the ins and outs of film production, and I've learned a lot. And we have to take a commercial break, but we'll be right back with more Passage to Profit after this. Welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, our special guest today, Michael Cerenzie. And we just heard a really fascinating breakdown of the film production process. If you didn't get a chance to hear his interview, you have to catch it. Our podcast will be available tomorrow, and you can get it wherever you get your podcast. So please check it out. Now it's time for Power Move. So Kenya, who are we power moving today?
So for Power Move, we're going to talk about Mark Cuban, who recently launched his own little war against Big Pharma. He started an online pharmacy where over 100 life-saving medications are going to be offered at low cost. So he charges a standard of 15% markup in an industry that typically sees no less than 100% markup. And in just one example, he has a life-saving leukemia drug with a typical retail price of $9,657, and he's offering it for $47. So he doesn't accept insurance due to the fact that it would force him to work with manufacturers requiring certain price points to be met. So he's helping do the greater good and making medication affordable for people who may not be able to get it otherwise.
That's great. Did he pitch it on Shark Tank?
I don't think he did. I think he just did it on his own.
Well, that's amazing. I didn't know that you could actually do something like that, but I do think other countries pay less for their medications than we do in the US. And good for him.
Yeah.
He kind of went the opposite way of that one guy a few years ago who bought that drug and jacked the price up. Remember?
Right.
I think he's
Right.
He's
Was
in
that
jail.
insulin
Yeah,
or
he's in jail.
something? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, I'm definitely down with making drugs more affordable, the right kind of prescription drugs, not nerds or anything laced with marijuana. That's a whole different story, but hopefully a lot of people will benefit from Mark's business acumen.
Thank
So
you, Mark.
Elizabeth, it's time for Fireside. Give
Woohoo.
us an update, please.
Yes, I talk about Fireside Directory every show. Fireside Directory is an online video directory of small businesses. So I've been interviewing business owners and I've been struggling to get my website, find the right person for my website, and et cetera. And I thought I found the right person. Then I'm in this peer advisory group. And they were like, well, you don't really know what you're doing, so think about your website some more. I'm like, but I did a wireframe. I outlined it in slides. I mean, I don't even know how it could be more clear. So anyway, the guy I'm working with on the website is super good and super smart. And he understands, like it's been a struggle partly because this is a directory site and a lot of website makers want to start with the brand, which I did not need.
Can you remind everybody what Fireside is all about?
I did. I said it's an online video directory of small businesses.
Oh,
You missed that?
all right. That was,
So if
that
you
was good.
so for instance, if you were trying to find somebody to help you develop your film, you could go to this directory and you'd see like a very short video of Michael, and you might, I doubt it, but you might see two or three other people with short videos, and you could say, wow, that Michael guy seems really cool. I think he'd be someone I'd want to work with. And then you could watch a longer video of him and kind of get to know him a little bit before he won't even know who you are, because you can go onto the site anonymously. So there's a lot of things built into my site, and it's also a YouTube channel. And then eventually I do want to take it into the metaverse, but that's down the road.
You've got big plans. So
Well, somebody has to. Okay, so moving on, I want to introduce our presenter, Rob Imbo with Adapt Agritech. Rob, tell us all about what you're doing.
Well, first of all, I don't want to upstage the award-winning Hollywood film producer and actor, but my background is compliance software. So sorry, Michael. We are advancing access to sustainably grown food. We're doing so with mushroom-focused shipping container farms that are solar powered. We are looking to open in every major city in North America right now. And I can give you the background if you like. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
yeah,
Well,
sure.
absolutely.
My background is software. I founded my own software shop doing B2B stuff in 2003, and out of that made an acquisition. It was an acqui-hire with a partner of mine, and we founded another company called Ascent Compliance, and that was the compliance software that we talked about, and that went unicorn. It actually did really, really well, and that was helping companies comply with environmental and social regulations. So it was making the world a better place at the same time. I think it's one of, or the Canada's most recent unicorn, which is I'm pretty proud of. I retired in 2017 because startup life and having a 6-month-old is not conducive to being a good parent, I found. So yeah, I retired, and we traveled in Southeastern Asia for a year, and I couldn't sit still, so I wrote a memoir. And I'm hoping that will become a movie, Michael Cerenzie.
Definitely.
In the early stages of building Ascent, I did suffer a repressed memory, came back, and I wanted to write and share about that. And writing itself was a therapy, and it's done well. And I guess my daughters are school age now, so I was looking last fall, I was looking to angel and invest. I've been played some advisory roles in small startups, and I came across this mushroom wellness company, which does not psychedelic, but medicinal, like functional mushrooms. And I was really into it, just into wellness, and I had lost a whole bunch of weight. And I met the founders, and you know how it is if you invest in the founders, right, more than the product. And they were great. And we did explore adding an arm of psychedelics. So we went to Miami and went to Bahamas. We did not like what we saw, just because there's just so much regulatory red tape. And on the way back from Bahamas, in the cab ride, actually, we told the driver about it, and he said, "Man, don't grow psychedelic mushrooms. Just go regular mushrooms. Grow food." You know, this past decade, you know, the new vertical farming has built up in Bahamas, and they have access to fresh, sustainably grown, you know, organic foods that, you know, before they'd have to have it shipped in. And that was kind of our aha moment. So fast forward now, we've designed and manufactured our own vessels, and we removed a lot of the complexity. And it's going to sound strange, but we believe we're at this iPhone moment, right? We're leveraging as much technology as we can to make it as easy as possible for the grower. So you have a shipping container. It's like we have one downtown Toronto, we have one downtown Ottawa and Austin, and all the operator has to do is go in, harvest, keep it clean, and then focus on sales. And they can walk it over to grocery stores, walk it over to restaurants. And it can be consistent, it could be organic. Also, the fact that mushrooms don't need light. So it made the ability for them to be solar powered. So literally just block them off in a downtown core, and we can grow them, or a suburban center, or even a farm now. Like all the farmers that they can just add a SKU, right? So they can actually just plop on a container and plug and play into their own network. So that's where we are right now. We're looking at opening, like I said, 1,000 locations over the next 2 or 3 years, and very excited about it. And of course, sorry.
So Rob, so I have one question, and I'm going to turn it over to Kenny after this, but why mushrooms?
Mushrooms, well, it's our wheelhouse, and I think we knew a lot. We have mycologists on staff, we have an executive chef on staff, and we just knew, and we knew how to grow it. We knew how to grow them very well, And we think that it's going to be the litmus test for, for future innovation, right? We internally joke and say that this is the road to strawberries. We want to be able to grow hyper nutritious food and have them grow all over the world. The other innovation is we're looking at water harvesting technology, where harvests the water out of the air, and you can get it down to the water molecules themselves being stuck out of the air. So it's 100% pure. Nothing else is getting absorbed. And this is pure, like FDA food grade water, right? It's just filtered water. We're working with a couple of companies, one of which has their prototype in the Smithsonian, and they have it working in the Mojave Desert, right? Because the first answer is just like, well, what climate is this going to work with? Well, if we can set up one of our containers, and with the addition of the water harvesting at every school in Cameroon or South Sudan or Tanzania, right? We can feed people, we can bring water to people, and literally suck it from the air.
That sounds great. So
Smart.
Kenya, do you have any thoughts on this, or?
I mean, I'm very fascinated because I just feel like we are going into an age of like self-sustainability, especially when it comes to like food. I mean, you see all the shortages that are going on. I mean, it's a pretty scary place right now. I think people feel a little uncertain. And I love that you're setting like a model in place for opportunities to grow other food. And the water thing is phenomenal, because I feel like water is, and it's going to become one of the biggest commodities. Where do you view like where things are going in the food growing business right now? Like in terms of like just how food is getting accessed, and like, where do you see that kind of evolving to in terms of like accessibility?
I think there's room for many winners, right? I think we're all on the same team. We don't think of competitors, we think of colleagues. I think there are massive vertical farm. Like there's one in Arrow Farms in New Jersey, which is like 2 million square feet and putting out millions of pounds. I think that's one solution. There are other, we have the hyper local solution. So I think just given global events, pandemics and wars, affecting the supply chain, I think it is going in the direction of vertical farming. I think we really want to be a part of making that move, right? And pushing that, moving the needle on food security. And this is the time to do it, right? Like I think that's the way to do it, I think.
Right.
Michael?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have any comments, or?
I think it's brilliant. I think what you're doing is absolutely needed. And I love your remark about, mushrooms to strawberries, because, I mean, your success, I looked at, I researched Rob a bit, I researched everybody a bit. Your success in your other company, I think, understanding also the product line, right? The chain of what gets broken, right? Works into some of your strategy when you're looking at the water side of this, and and the food growth side of this. So I just think it's brilliant what you're doing. Better than movie making, just so you know. I'm going to tell you,
mushrooms and movies are both needed, I think.
Yeah, you have to
killer mushrooms from Mars. There's a movie there somewhere.
So Rob, I have a question for you. So I don't know a whole lot about vertical farming, but I'm just kind of curious, like, one thing that is missing in a lot of our food today are the minerals and vitamins, because what they're grown in is not rich with those things that our bodies need. So what do you use as the substrate for growing?
So it could be any number of substrates. Right now, we're out of our substrates are all from Canada. And to your point, Michael, we are vertically integrated. We do everything ourselves, and manufacturing couldn't keep up. So we founded our own manufacturing facility as well out of Vancouver.
What does a vertically integrated mean? So, I mean, I guess horizontal farming means farming on the earth. Vertical means farming on levels or something?
So vertically integrated from a business standpoint is we own our own supply chain. So on the mushroom focus side, we have harvesters that literally go and harvest sustainably out of Canadian boreal forests to get our mushrooms for the mushroom wellness side. And for the building, manufacturing our facilities, our containers, we're doing that ourselves now as well. And with respect to the substrate and grow blocks, we're working with a company here, and we're partnering with them now. So that's what I meant by vertically integrated on that side. Vertical farming is, instead of using a ton of land, the easiest way to explain it is instead of land, they're just on shelves.
Right.
And some of these facilities are 50 to 60 feet high, and they're only now discovering that they're different climate regions, right? Every 12 to 15 feet is a new climate. So they have to change. So like I think vertical farming is in adolescence, I think, because there's been, hundreds of millions of dollars put into it. But I think there's a long way to go. But I think that's exciting at the same time.
When I look at your website, it looks like these steel shipping containers containing mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
So
I thought that, wow, these are like the most protected mushrooms in the world. Yeah, I mean, you have to get in there with a drill or something to attack those mushrooms or steal them. So I feel that they're well protected.
I have a question that I think is important. Could you ever take this and grow rice with it? Because one of the problems with rice that you probably know is it's full of arsenic because it's grown in water, it uptakes heavy metals better than almost any crop. And then we feed it to our babies. And so can you do this with rice? Is it even possible?
We can grow it. It's not cost effective to do so, but we're working on it. Like my partner with the manufacturing facility is a savant, and he really wants to nail rice and then nail strawberries. Strawberries is power intensive, so it's going to be really difficult for the power side. But we think we actually have a next version for the rice, but we can.
Wow.
What about tomatoes?
Tomatoes grow pretty easily.
Cucumbers.
Green beans.
But the other point for mushrooms,
keep those
I
rabbits
wanted
out.
to say is that that's why we have the shipping containers. 10 inches of steel to keep those rabbits out.
It may work, I don't know about squirrels though,
and we are entrepreneurs at heart as well. And mushrooms are the most profitably dense, right? So especially when you come into gourmet mushrooms. So we can literally sell these gourmet mushrooms across the street at a very, a 5-star Michelin rated, or I guess it's my 3-star Michelin rated restaurant. And then that will afford us the R&Ds to start developing less profitably dense, but more nutritious and more accessible. It can really fund the other side. It could fund us going to Cameroon and Tanzania. We have boots on the ground there. That's why I keep going to those examples. But so I think it is, we do well as we do good, right? And also I wanted to speak to each one of these units we're going to own, we're not going to sell. And the entrepreneurs we're going to invest in. So the operators in either New York, we actually have one in New York that wants to service Atlantic City and New York and Philadelphia. They're entrepreneurs, and they have a little bit of a background, but they don't really need it because we can actually help train them, and they can focus on the relationships. They can focus on what little they have to, and we take on all the complexity, right? So
do you actually have the water extraction technology developed for extracting the water from the air?
It's not ours. We're working with some companies that are doing that.
Does it exist at this point?
It does. There's actually 4 different technologies that are doing it. The most interesting one for us is not there yet. They're not at the product selling, not manufacturing stage, but they have a proof of concept. They can do it. We can see it. But there's an element of robotics that they have to develop. There's another one out of Israel, which is kind of leading the way. But it's more of an optimized dehumidifier. And those take up a lot of energy. So we really have to balance what we can and can't do with solar, because we really want to be off grid.
Kenya, do you have any questions?
I love what you're doing with the mushrooms. I actually have a friend who has a mushroom farm up here at the Black Dirt up in the Hudson Valley. They grow shiitake mushrooms, and that's like a money maker for them, right? So
sure.
I love that, you're kind of tapping into that space. In terms of like medicinal purposes for mushrooms, like I know they have a lot of other different benefits. Like what are some of the other, I guess, channels that you may think you might tap into in regards to these crops that you're growing that could serve other purposes?
I mean, so we were able to grow 14 strains of mushrooms in our containers. When we did a national survey of thousands of stores, we found that only 3 are currently for sale for differing reasons. But one big reason is that some of these mushrooms are very sensitive and will die in transport. And one particular I'm thinking is lion's mane. So lion's mane is one of those functional mushrooms, helps memory, helps focus. There's a lot of the science is starting to really back that up in humans, because a lot of the early science is in mice. And it's a very, very popular one. It's selling at like $70 a pound. And to cook it, chefs are loving it. They're eating this up. Sorry for the pun, but like, but it tastes. It has the consistency and tastes like a crab or a lobster. So you can actually have a lobster taco, but you're actually eating lion's mane, improving your memory and focus.
Oh,
right, it's neuroprotective.
Yeah, I think we had somebody on the show who was doing like fake seafood from mushrooms a while back. So that's really interesting. I'm sorry that we have to end this conversation, but we are on a schedule. And Rob, so if people were really interested in this and maybe wanted to start their own as like kind of a franchise from you or something, would they go to adapt.ag or would they go to robimbo.com? Where would you?
Adapt.ag is specifically for this. Yeah, the Rob Imbo is just my personal website. If you can spell it, you'll see me there.
Yeah, so it's Rob, ROBIMBEAULT. Is that French by any chance?
It is, yes.
And don't forget Father's Day is coming up. So if you're looking for that one-of-a-kind gift, get your dad a mushroom growing gift.
Yes. So are we going to break now or?
No, let's just keep the show going.
Okay. So now I am really excited to introduce Somaya Uzalade and Hilda Bergman with Dripp and Dropp. And each of those words has 2 P's. And they are a client of Gearhart Law. So Somaya and Hilda, could you please explain to us what your product is and what you're doing with it?
Sure. I'm going to start. Well, do you want a background or do you just want to know what it does?
Well, tell us what it is first and what it does, and then we'll move on to the background from there.
All right. So it's a car seat cover for infants. Usually anyone who's a parent knows that the baby comes straight from the hospital in the car seat. And usually they stay in the stroller in the car seat for about six months. And it covers the car seat from wind. It keeps them warm, not necessarily rain because it's not waterproof. It's a fleece cover that we made to start with, but it's a protective, keeps the baby warm because the infants, kids are sensitive. So it keeps them warm and cozy, and also the parent can see them, which is really doesn't exist. So
well, that's great. I looked at your website and it has a picture of a woman pushing a stroller, right? And you can see the cover there. Yeah. So how did you come up with the idea?
Well, we both are moms of 2. Well, Hilda has 2 kids and I have 1 in the same age group. So this was like 100 years ago. And when I had my baby, I was very frustrated of not finding anything that would actually stay on. Well, they didn't have anything for car seat, period. But like even for the stroller, because we make for car seat and strollers. And it was nothing available to cover my baby except like a blanket. and the blanket will fly away. You can't see the baby. So that was kind of,
Saran wrap doesn't work either, right?
it kind of does. It kind of does. But I just moved away from that. But you know, so that was my idea of like, okay, there got to be another way. Like there has to be a better way to be able to see the baby. And also, I came from, I come from fashion and music industry for the past 20 something years. And I felt like you should be able to be fabulous too. So we wanted to do something fun with like fun prints and make people happy when you have the baby. So that's kind of where the idea came from. And then my best friend and my business partner, Hilda, Bergman, we actually grew up together in Sweden, but we did not meet until
we didn't know each other.
We didn't know each other. And we met at the Swedish church in New York City. And our kids became really good friends, and they still are. We became good friends. So I just approached her and I was like, you know what, let's make this happen, you know? So that's kind of where the story is.
A match made in heaven.
Yeah. So Hilda, what's your take on this?
I mean, my take is when I met Somaya, I remember we met in the Swedish church in the play group, and I think I was struggling getting on this bulky, super big cover on my stroller, and she came up to me and we talked instantly about, oh my God, this is not the best thing for us. We should have something more simple, and we were joking, laughing about it. And we connected and we met again, and we still talked about other products we loved and disliked, and came back to this cover situation, how bulky and hard it is to bring with or not with. And sometimes you forget it home because it's too big to bring with. And she approached me one day and said, you know what, we should do it. We should make it ourselves. Just, you know, let's invent this product and do it. And I said, sure. And that's how we started, basically.
So you have a picture of it behind you, and it's a fleece cover that goes over the whole car seat, but in the front where the baby's face would be is plastic. And what is that material? It's see-through material. Is that some sort of plastic?
Yep.
It is plastic, rainproof. Yeah.
So for our listeners, maybe you could describe it even in a little bit more detail, since they won't be able to see the picture. It really covers the top, sort of the top half of the stroller piece, and then where the baby's face would be seen if you were pushing it. And then it covers the rest of the baby's body, but that's more of a fabric.
It's really ingenious. It's made from a comfy, wonderful fabric, right? So is there anything, I mean, I guess you could talk about how you put it on the stroller and how you can put it in a little bag that you carry with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually covers the whole car seat. So it covers the whole baby, the car seat. The car seat won't get dirty, or it won't be any air coming into the baby to be cold. Also, what was really important, it was the easy access. So the window.
Here, I can show maybe.
Yeah, the window you can actually open with a Velcro. So it has a Velcro where you can reach the baby if the baby's hungry, which they usually are. And you can feed the baby, or if you need to take the baby out and change the diaper, whatever. It's just the easy access. Also, what we thought about, because we did grow up in Sweden, and as Canada and Sweden, we are very much about the babies, and we walk a lot. And it has a reflector in the back, so you can see the baby or the car seat in the dark with the stroller. So it's also for safety measures. It's very easy to put on and take off. It comes as in a little pouch, like here.
Yeah,
that's very cute.
So it's waterproof. This is actually waterproof.
Oh,
the
So this
pouch.
is waterproof. Yep, and then you can hang it up on either on the bar, the handle on the stroller, or you can just throw it in your bag. So it's really, really simple and small.
Very ingenious. Michael, do you have any comments or questions?
It's out of my depth. I don't have any babies right now, but it is amazing. And I think, it's one of those inventions and creativity that, when you see it, you think this should always have existed, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
which I love the simplicity of the brilliance of an idea, right? Because
Right.
everyone gets it, like, you know,
Yeah.
and everyone needs it, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
great for both of you.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Kenya, what about you? What do you think? You're a mom.
Yeah, I mean, both my kids are way past the, carrier stage, but I love it because I remember the times I'd like, put my son in the stroller and you cover it with a blanket and you really can't see him when you're walking and you check in, are you all right in there? So I love the fact that you can see through it. And I love the fact that there's like that sanitary component to it where it's covered. I mean, even everything going on now with COVID, it's like, you got to feel, pretty secure as a parent bringing your kid out in public and there's a covering there. And so I love that. It's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember as a new mom, like being bored at home a little bit because babies sleep a lot. And so anyway, I wanted to go to the mall, but then how do you get the baby from the car into the mall? And this was in Michigan. Both my babies were born in Michigan, and it's like it's snowing or it's cold. This would have been perfect. And then, the other thing people get upset about is like, I don't know if there are still people that do this, but sometimes there are people that will like lean in and kiss your baby without your permission.
Oh yeah.
It's a baby protector.
Touching the baby.
Yeah, they do. Yep.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Especially politicians, right?
And
They're from the wrong
you really
party.
don't
You
want-
don't want them kissing your baby. That's for sure.
I like too that the plastic that you can see through comes all the way off. So you could even just lift the baby out with the cover on. And it gives you enough view of the baby that you can see what's going on. So I just, this is so ingenious. And I agree with Michael. It's like, why did it take so long for someone to invent this?
Yeah.
Well, then we came along.
Yes.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Well, do they fit all stroller
Yes.
types? So
The
it's
universal.
We would say
universal.
exactly. I mean, also would like to add that it comes on very easily. Think of it as a sock. You just pull it over and then you can just pull it off. It's super easy, but it's universal.
So where are you selling these then? How are you getting the word out and where are you selling them?
Where we literally just finished manufacturing. So we just got it last week. But we decided to, we're a small business, women owned, and we wanted to support small businesses. So we decided to actually manufacture them in a very small factory in Queens, New York.
Nice.
Great.
That's fantastic.
Very costly, FYI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was something that we really, really felt strong about. Like we didn't want to go to China and do it. We wanted to stick with, start in the US and eventually maybe go to Europe or North Africa or something like that and produce there. But we just kind of didn't want to do the China route. No offense to China, but that's not what we wanted to do.
If you're going to make baby products, you need to trust the source of those, right?
Yeah.
And we've heard so many stories.
Yeah.
Robert, do you have any thoughts?
I have two friends who are pregnant now, so I need to know your email.
Yeah.
My youngest was born on January 14th here in Ottawa, and it was -30 that day. So yeah, getting her to the car, I'm just like, why doesn't this exist? Why doesn't every hospital give these away and every right? I think it's brilliant. I love it, and I can't wait to order some.
Thank you.
So what is your marketing plan though? Like, I think that was a brilliant idea, Rob, to go to hospitals. Do you have plans yet, a strategy for getting these to the public? I think it's really going to be a popular product.
Do you want to go? Do you want me to go?
I can go. I mean, of course, social media is a huge part of the marketing plan. We have Instagram and we have Facebook. But then also in New York City and outside of the city, we have a lot of independently small baby stores that are willing or interested to actually do sell our products. And I think that's what we're going to start with for now. What do you think, Samaya?
Yeah, I mean, so before we actually manufactured them, we did get like licensing deal offers because it is a great product. But we declined it because we really wanted to do guerrilla marketing. We weren't rushing. So this is not an overnight thing. This has taken 6 years in the making. So from the idea to the actual product.
Mhm.
So for us, it's more important to take the time that it needs to take. I think it's going to go very well on its own, to be honest. At this moment, we are just selling at our website, drippanddrop.com. And Dripp and Drop is also Swedish and English, so it's easy to pronounce.
There's two
yes.
P's in drip and two P's in drop,
There
right?
you
Yes.
go. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And as you can see, we have a small little Swedish flag on the side in our logo, which is very cute. But, we just wanted to go on the guerrilla marketing side. I already have amazing people that are supporting us. Somebody already contacted a producer at ABC to try to see if we can get on Good Morning America.
Yeah,
And
smart.
I have friends who have contacts with a lot of people. So it's, we just wanted to finish the product. And I think that my feeling and my gut feeling is that it's going to do very well on its own, that we not necessarily need like a big machine. And like I said, we're not in a rush.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we've come to the end of this segment. So people can find this at drippanddrop.com. That's DRIPPANDDROPP.com. So anybody that has a baby, I think, would be thrilled to get this. So anybody looking for gifts for new parents,
Yeah.
go to
We already got
The best baby gift.
And also, I just want to make sure that it's so people know it is for strollers too. So we start, you can get the car seat, and then you can get the stroller. So the idea of that too was a lot of have twins, or they have two babies in different ages, that they have twin strollers, and usually the cover is huge, like you can't, like it's
Right.
ridiculous. So this one you can actually separately put on the car seat and one on the stroller seat, so you can have two babies or one baby in a twin stroller. So it's just small and very cute, and yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So listeners, you are listening to Passage to Profit, The Road to Entrepreneurship with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart as hosts. And our special guest was Michael Cerenzie. If you missed any of the show, our podcast comes out tomorrow. Look for us wherever you get your podcasts. We're everywhere. And or go to our YouTube
Which
channel.
is a good thing, by the way.
Yeah, go to our YouTube channel if you want to see the people that were speaking and see the product. It's really interesting. So we will be right back after this message. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest today, Michael Cerenzie. And now we are to the part of our show where we have a little bit of fun. So
Right. The rest was not fun. This is this is now.
okay. I thought it was all fun, but this is not.
Wow.
Not okay, whatever. Anyway,
This is the lighter side of Passage to Profit.
anyway, so we want to ask everybody a question, and I will pose the question. The question is, was there something that happened when you were a kid that you still remember because it was really weird or really fun or funny or something? So Michael, are you ready for the hot seat?
Sure.
Okay, what happened to you as a kid?
So this is more of a magical, endearing kind of short story. So when we were growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, and we couldn't afford to go on vacation. And it was the last weekend, Labor Day weekend, before going back to school. And my mother came to me and she said, where would you want to go? And I said, Paris, France. And we lived in Northern Ontario. And so I went to bed that night to wake up the next morning. I was about 6 years old. And my mother had stayed up all night and made like a little French sailor outfit with a beret and a note. And when I came downstairs, she had made, pain au chocolat, so like chocolate croissant. And instead of cafe au lait, it was hot chocolate. And she had set up these easels in our front living room that were facing a painting of the Seine and the Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe, right? So we painted the French scenery, and then we went on the sidewalk. Instead of doing a Kool-Aid stand, we sold our paintings to the tourists that were visiting, France at the time. And at the end of the day, we made money and we went to a French restaurant and had dinner. And the irony of it is a few days later, I went back to school and the teacher asked, you know, what did you do for your summer vacation? And of course I put up my hand and said I went to Paris.
No.
And she called my mother because she thought there was, you know, too imaginative of a young man. And my mother came to school and she said, you know, we're just worried about Michael because he thinks he went to Paris over the weekend. And my mother looked at this woman, this teacher, named Madame Diamatini, and said, if my son said he went to Paris this weekend, he went to Paris. And that was the magical way that my mother taught me to imagine kind of the life that I wanted to lead and to be able to take the steps to make it happen, right? So it's the most endearing thing I remember about her. My mom's alive, she's 92. She thinks that I tell this story too many times. And she's also my mentor in business. She was the first national Mary Kay director with Pink Cadillac in in Canada.
Wow.
And so she had saw it on 60 Minutes. So she was friends with Mary Kay Ash before she passed. And so it kind of wraps up kind of who I am. I love your story about your company, about women producing your product, by the way. In our company, 78% of the staff and the leadership is women in my company here.
That's awesome.
And I think there's some direct influences there from Lillian in growing up the way I did. So that's the story I wanted to share today.
Wow, that's really great. That's amazing, and it's a wonderful story. Robert?
Mine is less endearing. I think as a child, I think I was 7 or 8 years old, and I snuck out of my bed at night and peeked over to watch what my parents were watching, and it was the original Alfred Hitchcock Psycho. And I, like, back then, like, there's one TV in the entire house. It's an entire, you know, it takes up half the room type thing. So I'm just watching a screen to watch a screen, you know, and enjoy the duality of today and screens. But anyways, and I saw the shower scene.
Oh,
and
no. I've never seen that.
It freaked me. Well, to watch it today, you're like, they don't show anything, right? It's not much. It's just chocolate sauce on a wall, right? But like when I saw that, and then I filled in the blanks, and I just sort of zombied back to my room and didn't watch TV for a few years after that. But to this day, I just turned 50, but to this day, and I was joking with a friend about who does the same thing, but if I'm at a friend's house or a stranger's house, and I go to the washroom and the shower curtain is closed, I peek behind without fail. I make sure that's empty.
So if you're one of Rob's friends, make sure the bathroom's clean before he comes out. I'm going to follow up with you, Rob, because my childhood memory is a little on the macabre side too. When I was 8 or 9 years old, I saw a man get electrocuted. And so what had happened was he was driving his Volkswagen Beetle down the street, and this electrical wire fell right on top of his Volkswagen, and it started spurting orange sparks, and the poor guy panicked. He was fine, but he panicked, and he opened the car door, and as soon as he put his foot on the ground, it completed the circuit and just zapped him. And it made an impression on me. And I don't like anything that's electric. That's why I'm so happy that that we're all going to a unified USB adapter. But it just seems safer to me. But you know, for years I could go back and look at the street, and I could see this poor man's footprint in the asphalt where he had stepped down. So
okay, so that was good. So
I told you this was going to be the fun part of the program, right?
So I want to hear what Samaya has to say.
Mine is a little happier. Well, I can just say I remember what really sticks with me to this day, and what I try to give my son the same thing, is we would I have a lot of siblings, so my parents would take turns to send 2 of us each because it's too expensive. So we used to go back home to Tunisia to visit family, And I have a twin sister who lives there. We didn't grow up together. So I used to go every year, every summer. And just really, now that I look back and, memories is the culture is so rich, and the food and everything that smells like jasmine or grilled food reminds me of my grandmother and grandparents, and good times we had every summer. And so my son is getting sent this year to Tunisia for a month by himself and spend the same thing, and getting stopped in the street by lambs and sheep and maybe a camel or whatever, and just culturally make him richer, which is so important. So that stays with me rest of my life.
That's lovely.
That is really nice.
So Hilda, what is your
Nice.
memory?
I'm so silly. I'm a hardcore fan. I love Superman, and I talk about the old school Superman, Christopher Reeve. That was my guy. And growing up, I know. No, yeah, but I envisioned being him, literally. And my brother, he was a hardcore fan of Batman. So what we did was to dress up, and now we're talking about, we are 7, 8 years old. We took sheets as capes, and I'm Superman, he's Batman, and we are starting to battling each other. And who is the strongest? Who is going to win? And of course, sometimes Superman won, and then Batman cried and told mom, and then mom came back and was angry, and vice versa. But the cute thing is that even still today, we call each other Superman and Batman in text messages or phone calls or anything, like, "Hey, Superman, how are you?" or "Batman, how are you doing?" So that's something that stuck with me, and I love it.
That's
great.
awesome. Kenya.
Wow.
Yeah, Kenya.
That's great. I was going to just kind of piggyback off of Richard's story and talk about how when I was a kid, I got electrocuted, but I feel like I have something better to share based on what.
Are you dissing my story?
No, I just feel like I want to end on a happy note. But Michael made me remember a story just about like the influence of your parents. And, I didn't know my biological father, but I had a really great stepdad who, since we were little kids, he'd be like, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? And I was like, I always wanted to work in radio. And what he would make me do is we used to get these little weekly Jet magazines, and it was from Ebony magazine. It was like this little weekly thing that would come out, and they'd have these little stories in there, and he would make me sit at the kitchen table every single week, and I'd have to read out loud, because he was like, if you're ever going to talk on the radio, you have to read how you talk, right? And he did that for years and years and years. And I really believe in the power of like people sewing into you and your dreams and those things manifesting later on in life. And this is the first time I've ever told that story on the radio. So Michael, you made me remember that today. I was like,
that's how
maybe a little.
Nice.
That's why you're so
nice.
polished.
Oh, I don't know about the polished part, but I appreciate the fact that he always believed in me from the beginning. So
I have a story. I was going to do one, but I decided to change it to the most dramatic thing that ever happened to me growing up. So back when we were kids, like kids went places by themselves, like they could walk to school by themselves and all this other stuff. So I was a little kid in Seattle, growing up in Seattle, and I was walking to school by myself. And all of a sudden, everything started shaking. And the sidewalk in front of me buckled up and broke in half. And I looked over, and all the telephone poles were swaying back and forth. Like it was crazy. And I was a little kid. I had no idea what was going on. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll just keep walking because I don't know what else to do. So ignorance is bliss, right?
Yes, for sure.
So when I got to school, it was kindergarten. The teacher was having us all talk about what we did. And I said, well, I just kept walking. And she's like, oh, what a brave little girl. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah. Anyways, it was an earthquake. It was like one of the biggest earthquakes Seattle ever had. But what was cool about it, when you talk about your mother, so my mother was in this building downtown called the Smith Tower that was built to be earthquake proof. But the way it was built to be earthquake proof was it would like move with the earth. So she told us a story about how the building was swaying back and forth like those telephone poles were, and stuff was flying everywhere and people were flying everywhere. And she made it in this big, huge joke. Like she was laughing about it. She's like, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And so it was
So
like,
now you laugh at earthquakes.
well, so she took the scary out of it. You know, she
Yeah.
made it into
Right.
something kind of fun. And she did that with thunder and lightning storms. We loved storms. So she took things that could be really scary and made them fun and funny. So that was cool.
That was nice.
That's
I didn't know that about you. So thank you for telling us that story.
We've only been married years.
Oh.
The sparkle and the mystery is still there. So
Yes, you do things that surprise me every day. So now we are coming to the end of the show, unfortunately, because this has been really fun. This has been a great group. And I'm going to go through everybody's websites one more time and how to find them. So our guest was Michael Cerenzie, founder of Stratagem Group and a Hollywood film producer. He's in Toronto. And his website is stratagemgroup.ca, STRATAGEM group.ca.
and call him up if you want to make a movie in Canada.
Yeah, talk to him. And
Thanks, Richard.
and,
Thanks.
and then we had Rob Imbo with Adapt Agritech, adapt.ag. And you can find him online if you can spell his name. It's Rob, IMB.
That was meant to be a compliment, by the way.
And he's really helping change the food growing industry, which is very cool. He's way looking towards the future. And we always like to say this show is about innovation and what's going on in the future. And it's really interesting. And then we had some.
And then the question is how tall a mushroom can he grow?
The question is, will people buy his truffles? Because that's where he's going to make his money. Right?
There you go. Get
and
a
then-
container of mushrooms for your backyard.
Yeah. And then we had Somaya, Uzalade, and Hilda Bergman with Dripp Dropp. Their website is drippandropp.com. And what an innovative idea to keep your baby covered up in a warm, cozy thing when they're in their stroller or car seat, but still be able to see them through a window. So I just think this is going to sell like
Protect your
hot cakes.
baby
Protect your baby.
and keep
Yeah.
your baby warm and dry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't beat that. So I guess it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back next week with another Passage to Profit episode. And I want to thank our producer, Noah Fleischman, our production coordinator, Alicia Morrissey, and our syndication manager, Mark Wilson. And as I mentioned, you can find us on podcasts everywhere if you missed part of the show. And you're listening to Passage to Profit, the road to entrepreneurship.